All right. Welcome to episode 49 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Shout out to our good friends at Fellowship Brand Premium Men's Grooming Products. Love the partnership we have with them on the podcast. Love their products even more. Check out fellowshipbrand.com. Learn more about their oils, balms, butters for the hair on your face. And while you're at it, use the code JBP, the Jake Blanchard podcast, JBP at checkout, and get yourself 10% off of your order. My guest today, Larry Hagner, and I am so humbled to have him on. He is the creator of the Dad Edge podcast, is rated as the #1 dad podcast on iTunes, Pandora, Stitcher. He's got 10 plus million downloads in over 175 countries. He's the best-selling author of 2 books, and his platform has been host to some of the most elite humans on the planet. He helps hundreds of fathers through his mastermind groups, his events. He's out of St. Louis, Missouri, where he and his wife raised 4 boys, and he's here with me right now. Larry, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for being on.
Dude, what a crazy intro, man. Appreciate that, man. It's good to be here, man.
Absolutely. Hey, you're a busy guy, and I certainly appreciate the time that you've carved out. Per the intro, you've got an ecosystem around you, around resources for fathers, guides, content, all kinds of things out there to help people figure it out. Let's peel back a couple layers, man. Like, where does this come from? Like, what's the best arc to follow this on? Is it childhood? Is it something that you arrived at as an adult? Let's start where it makes the most sense.
Yeah, man. I just woke up one day. I was like, man, I know everything there is to know about being a father and a husband. I should share this with the world.
I love it.
Myself. Like, if you believe that one, if you believe that one, I'll tell you another one. No, honestly, man, this came out of really dark places. I'm not going to lie, and it really did start like at childhood. I was raised, I'm 45. I was born in 1975. My parents, my mom, biological father, were married in 71. Married for about 4 years. I was born, and then shortly after I was born, really horrible divorce from what I understand. I don't know all the details. I just know it was really bad. My dad visited me for a little bit and then parted ways and signed over parental rights at the time. So, I had no recollection of my father whatsoever. In fact, I'm 45. I remember when I was 4, like literally, I remember this. Like I remember being in preschool and I remember men picking up their kids from school. And I knew what a dad was. And I knew I didn't have one, but that was okay by me. It didn't really bother me. I just knew like, hey, moms go out and find dads. That was my understanding of it, right?
Yeah.
And my mom hadn't found ours yet, and that was okay with me. But here's a funny story. I remember meeting the man who I remember to be my first father, even though he wasn't, when I was 4, same age. My mom had been dating him. They met at work, and I'll never forget, she invited him over for dinner to meet me. And I'll never forget this guy walking in my house, 1979. Like he walks in, he was a white collar worker. He was a data software engineer for a computer company. And he just had like the 3-piece suit on. He had the double Windsor knot. He had like the feathered hair. He had the
big lapels, like
no big lapels, but like he had like the trench coat, the feathered hair, our mustache, all that good stuff. He came walking in. My mom introduces me, and literally the first question I asked this guy was, "Are you going to be my dad?" Like literally, that was the first, yeah. And like I remember like a hush of awkward silence after that. So, but a year later, they got married, and I was so happy. I was like, dude, this is cool. I was in the wedding. I actually had a blue tuxedo, like going back to like Dumb and Dumber days, right? I had a blue tuxedo. And I was like, wow, man, our family's complete. This is so cool. He made good money. My mom was able to quit her job. She stayed home with me. Like it was cool. And then every year that they were married until I was 10. So about 5 years, it just got progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that my mom wanted to find me a dad. I don't know if she truly loved him though. And their relationship just crumbled. Like I remember so much tension. He was a big drinker. He was very nice when he was sober, very mean when he would drink, and he was mentally and verbally and physically abusive. And just, I remember being hit a lot as a kid. I remember being pushed down. I remember being slapped in the face. My mom, they went to blows a few times. They got divorced when I was 10. I've never seen him since. So that was kind of crazy. And he adopted me. I actually still have his last name to this day. Interesting thing happened when I was 12. I started asking questions like, where did I come from? Like, right. I knew at that point, like, where did I even come from? Mom explained to me who my father was. And I won't get into details just for the sake of time, but I met him and by mistake. Like it was not planned. I actually ran into him somewhere. I basically heard his name, and that's how it started. And we had this relationship for about 6 months. He had been remarried, 2-year-old son, another one on the way. And man, I was so excited. I was so excited to have a father, like not only a dad, but like my dad in my life.
Yeah.
And I just remember like, we started hanging out, like we would do activities together. He would come to my little league games. Like I'd spend the night at his house. Like his wife was really nice. And I was like, man, this is so cool. And then I felt like this tension after we had like sort of hung out for like 6 months. Like something was wrong, something was off, and I couldn't pinpoint it. And we finally had a conversation about it. And I don't remember the exact details. I just know it didn't end well. And we went our separate ways. And that was devastating. And my mom continued for the next several years to date and marry a few more times, and it was always the same guy. It was always a drinker, always a partier, always a toxic element, right? And I just went through a really hard time when I was a kid. I overate. I was really fat. I failed the 8th grade. I had to do 8th grade twice. After that, though, I got into a good high school, went off to college, started a career in pharmaceutical sales. And I'll fast forward the story till I was 30. 30 years old, been married for a few years. My first son was on the way. I have 4 boys now. I have 15, 13, 7, and 5. And I'm in a Starbucks with a coworker of mine for a meeting. And there's 2 things I can tell you about Starbucks. Number 1, you will overpay for coffee every time.
No doubt.
Right. And number 2, you might run into a biological parent that you hadn't seen in 18 years. And that's what happened. He came walking through the door and I saw him and I was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly who that is. I know exactly who that is. The coworker that was with me, she just looked at me. She was like, are you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost. And I was like, I gotta believe this. I was like, my father just walked in. Like my father, like my biological father that I've never really known, except for short blips in my life. And she asked me what I was going to say to him. I said, absolutely nothing. Nothing. I'm just going to sit here. Mom, watch him leave. I'm not going to say a word. So she took it upon herself to get up without saying another word. And she went right over to him. And I was like, what is she doing? And I'll never forget like that feeling of her sitting down next to my father. And I could read his lips from across the cafe. And I saw his lips and he said, where is he? And he started looking around and then our eyes met. And there's something that's kind of crazy that when your eyes lock with your father that you haven't seen in 18 years or really you've never really known your whole life. And that is you're either going to freeze, you're going to run, or you don't know what the hell to do. And I had all the above, right? So he came walking over, we connected. And again, for the sake of time, I'll just share this, here we are 16 years later, we have a relationship. We have a friendship. We've decided the past is the past. My dad's 73 years old. You can either focus on all the past and the wrongdoings, and that will lead your life, or you can focus on what could be. And I've decided to focus on what could be. But what I can tell you is that growing up the way I did, I knew I was like, man, I am not, this will not happen on my watch. Because every single guy my mom was with was a disaster, like a disaster, is the literal opposite of what I wanted as a father. So when I became a father for the first time, what I found out for the first 6 years was I was failing miserably. I wasn't patient with my kids. I had a mediocre marriage. Communication, intimacy was completely off the rails. I was probably on borrowed time with my marriage. And I had a huge wake-up call, and this is how Dad Edge started, 2012. My son was 4 at the time. And my oldest was 6, and my youngest at the time was 4. And my 4-year-old stepped out of line, and I spanked him, and he hit the ground. And everything that I had swore not to do in that moment, I was doing all of it. And I went to help. I went to help him up, and he looked at me like I was a monster, like terrified of me. And that night I went into my office and I knew at that moment something had to change. So I did what every grown adult does when they have a bad moment and they're overwhelmed and they're stressed out. I got on social media.
Oh, of course.
I could just forget it. And I saw this button, in the corner. It said create a page. I hit that button and the words "The Good Dad Project" just rolled off my heart and onto that keyboard. And that was a surrender. Like, it was basically saying, I don't know what I'm doing. No clue. But I'm going to go out and learn. And I'm going to go out and learn something new every day. And I'm just going to post it here. And never did it for a following, never did it for attention. I mostly just did it for my own accountability. And that ended up turning into a blog. 2013, 2015 turned into a podcast. Wrote my first book called The Dad Edge. It's a real basic book. It's basically, I wrote the book as if I was having a conversation with my best friend or my old self. And, but here we are 6 years later, podcasting. And man, it's been, 700 plus episodes. I've interviewed some amazing people, and I say that very, very humbly. Matthew McConaughey just came on the show.
I saw that, man. That was so exciting. I haven't, I've got two things I need to do around Matthew McConaughey. One, I've got his book up here, Good Fights, that I need to finish reading. And then two, I need to listen to that episode, man. I'm really excited about it.
It was really good, man, especially in the middle, because I brought my wife into this office to meet him.
Yeah.
And I've known my wife for 25 years. We've been married for 18 years. She is Miss Steady. She does not have highs and lows. She's not like, she's not like one of those women. And I actually saw her just completely like speechless and giddy and not know what to say. It was hilarious. I've never seen her so smitten in my life. It was really funny.
That is so rad. Hey, there's one thing that what a tremendous story you just kind of laid out as far as the foundational elements of kind of what got you into the mindset of really focusing on parenthood, fatherhood, leveling up as a man in life, and probably a lot of areas of life. The one thing about your story that I'm really interested in is when you reconnected with your father when you were a child, and there was you said it was a small kind of period of time there. You have a separate last name, right? I mean, your last name Hagner. Yep. Was there ever a conversation? Was there ever like a shown interest at that point of you thinking about maybe changing your name back, or like, what was that? Was there some conflict there, or can you get in touch with that?
That's such a good question. I've never been asked that before. And to be honest, there was never any conversation around it. And I don't think that, he was even in that mindset at the time, especially the way the relationship ended. It basically had a theme of, it's not you, it's me. This is really overwhelming for me. And I'm trying to start over, and this is really complicating things. Right. So no, there was never any conversation around it. And I don't even think it was a thought at the time on either one of our minds, really.
Okay. That makes sense. Thanks for entertaining that, man. And so now you've grown this platform, like again, in the intro, there's always room for the best at the top, and you've kind of found yourself there from a podcasting standpoint for fatherhoods. And what's it been like? I mean, you talked about getting the brand started, but take me on the maturity path of, what happened. I mean, I know that you started with posting and then kind of a blog, and then all of a sudden moving to a podcast, but when did you realize that pharmaceutical sales, if you were doing that still at the time, was going to be displaced by this ecosystem you were building?
I don't know if there was ever really like that aha moment at the time. That was really even never the goal at the time. It was really, I started the podcast just to have higher level conversations with people because I was curious and I just wanted to learn. And what I learned was no matter who I was talking to, no matter what their celebrity status was, professional athlete, Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink has been on the show, Leif Babin, guys like, like I said, McConaughey, and we've got an arsenal of new guests that are coming up too. And what I can tell you is that being a father will bring any man to their knees. It does not matter what you're doing in your life. It doesn't matter how great of an athlete you are. It doesn't matter how big of a celebrity you are. That part of our lives as men and fathers, we all put our pants on the same way. And all of us are just trying to figure it out. Now, here's what I'll tell you. Every single person that I've interviewed has strengths and certain mindset skill sets that they share. Like, so for instance, you pick the brain of a guy like Jocko Willink, who extreme ownership and dichotomy of leadership, one of the most highly decorated Navy SEALs on the planet. You can really dial into his mindset and his skill set. And then you interview him in such a way like, okay, like now put this through the lens of you being a parent and a husband. What does that look like? So to really understand like how these guys have incorporated, whether it's their professional athletics or their highly decorated military career, or somebody like McConaughey, who's worked his tail off to get where he's at, right? And then to implement some of those skill sets and learnings into your parenting and marriage is unbelievably, it's unbelievably amazing.
Yeah. And another thing I really wanted to talk to you about was like the way that fatherhood is portrayed in entertainment and
Mm-hmm.
television and these types of things. I mean, you're having real conversations on your platform with, people who may portray actors on television, but in general, and at least from a TV standpoint, a lot of times as movies as well, fathers kind of seem a little aloof. They seem often, they're kind of like this overweight caricature of like the 1950s, 60s, 70s father figure. You don't see a lot of men that you aspire to be necessarily on television. I know that's not necessarily what television's there for. It's there for entertainment. But I feel like by and large, there's very few examples of really good fathers represented in entertainment. Do you have a perspective on that, or maybe something to kind of widen my lenses there?
Yeah, it pisses me off. Just being
Okay.
real with you, it does. Because, and not that I'm like publicly like, that I trash that type of entertainment, right? I just don't agree with it, because the thing is that if you really get to it, every single man that I've come in contact with, I mean, I added it up, and it's been over 8,000 hours that I've spent with men over the past 10 years. And what I can tell you is that you get to the heart of a man, he has a deep desire to be the complete antithesis of that image, right? He has the desire to show up big for his wife, for his kids. But the reason that I think we're seeing in the entertainment business, like this man who's like aloof, number one, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But in some cases it's true, but not because we as men want it to be true. It's because we don't have a map, and a lot of us don't know exactly what to do. So a lot of us, here's the thing, here's the crazy, a lot of us are aloof. Now, not to the extreme of like, Peter Griffin or anything like that,
you got a good Family Guy, man.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, not to that degree, but at the same time, like, if a lot of men just don't know exactly what move to make next on the chessboard, right? And what I can tell you is that is the answer to that question and to that direction is community, and it's tribe, and it's being around mentors, and it's being around people that can point you in the right direction. Because a lot of times, here's what fatherhood feels like. A lot of the times, it's almost like being in imagine a 5,000 square foot room that's in a square, okay, and it's complete blackness, right? And you're desperately looking for the light, and you don't know where it's at. Now you can search, and let's just say the room is not empty. Like, there's obstacles all over the place. And what fatherhood usually feels like is walking around that room in the dark, and you stub your toe and you hit the desk and you trip over, a toy, or God only knows. And you're like, where is this light switch, right? And the biggest thing that can shorten our learning curve is to get in the room with other men who have been in that room before you and know where that light switch is at. And they can give you a tap on the back, like, hey man, 15 paces straight, 5 to the right, 7 to the left, reach up 3 feet on the wall. It's right there. And that is what that's what separates a man who's aloof and in that room alone, trying to figure out where the hell that light switch is, to be like, I know exactly what to do next. And that's what they go do.
Yeah. And I love that analogy. I also love the idea of like, I don't think some people know that they're looking for a light switch.
Yeah.
And I think that's really challenging. Is like maybe they're not looking at their actions or those negative externalities and how they impact those people closest to them, especially their children, and how that's going to manifest. Now, I kind of feel like there's a point where like if you're on the extreme a lot of times your kids will maybe come out and they'll know what not to do.
Yep.
And maybe that puts a chip on their shoulder. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like you're either winning or you're learning, right? So if you have really great guidance, awesome. If you don't, but for a lot of kids, man, and these are crazy statistics. If you're living in an environment where you're growing up fatherless, which, by the way, 33% of the children in the U.S. are raised without a biological father. That's 25 million kids. 1 in 4 kids, so 25%, are raised without a biological step or adoptive father. 70% of the public believes that fatherlessness is the major contributing issue to family and social problems facing America. And you are 70% more likely to drop out of high school or be a pregnant teen if you're growing up in a household without a father. So we know that it's really important, but we don't necessarily, or many of us don't necessarily know, what to do besides being there. Because being there is just part of the equation. That's being engaged and active. And like, how do you help others kind of cut through the nebulousness or the overwhelmingness of that big dark room you talked about earlier?
Yeah. And, a couple other statistics there too, which is kind of crazy, right? So 92% of incarcerated individuals come from a fatherless home as well. Over 80% of high school suicides come from some sort of absent father figure in their life. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know who Meg Meeker is. She wrote the book Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, and also Strong Mothers, Strong Sons. But she's one of the best authors on the topic of fatherhood, believe it or not, even though she's a woman.
Yeah.
But her books are amazing. And she came on the podcast a couple times, and she literally said this statement. She's like, "You want to fix the problems of the world? You put a father underneath every roof in America. That's how you fix a lot of these problems." And that rang true, right? So, you talk about how do you cut through the overwhelmingness of this, right? And that's where I'll go back to, you have to be in the right group. We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And here's the funny thing. We really believe in that statement when it comes to wealth and when it comes to business, right? And we're like, yeah, man, like, hey, if I want to be a millionaire, I got to be in rooms with billionaires, right? Like if I want to level up my spirituality, I got to get in church with people who are way more spiritual than me. If you want to be an epic husband and father, you got to get in the room with people who know how to do it better than you do. And that's literally the answer. And here's the other thing too. You have to get very authentic with who you are and what you want help with, because most men are having like these really surface level conversations. Everything that we ask each other as men can be answered in 3 words: good, fine, or busy. How's life? Oh, it's good. Hey man, how are the kids? Oh, they're busy, man. They're in sports, like how's work? Oh, it's good, man. Like, well, I'm super busy though, man. Super busy. How are you? And that's like it, right? And even like our conversations, like no kidding around. If you look at the body language of men, right? If you're watching this on video, most men will talk to each other like this, where they'll have like a beverage or something like this covering their chest. It's like a body language of guard, right? I don't want anyone to see my flaws. Everything's got to be fine, good, maybe even a little perfect, right? I don't want anyone to see that I'm struggling. But here's the thing, not that we have to talk about our struggles all the time. Every man has a strength. Every man. One of your strengths, Jake, is the fact that you have been physically disciplined to get your body in a certain condition. I mean, your transformation has been absolutely insane. I can't even tell you how many men would love to dial into your mindset and be like, hey man, like, how do I do that too? Right. And granted, I'm sure you've got a lot of other strengths, right? But most men, what we're so focused on is like what we need to improve upon. They're like, oh yeah, I'm good at that, but I got all this other stuff I got to do. Right. Every man has a strength. And what I can tell you is that when we really dial into how we complement each other. So like, for instance, if I'm a guy and one of my needs is like, I want to be physically healthier, right? Then I'm going to ask you about that and you're going to help me. Right. And then maybe for you, it's like, hey man, like I'm new to this whole dad thing. Like, and I'm trying to keep my communication with my wife on point. And maybe one of the questions you have for me is like, dude, you and Jessica have been married for 18 years, like 25 years. You guys have an epic marriage, because we do, like, and you guys have incredible communication. Like, how do you do it? Right. And those are the conversations that you have. And the cool thing about having conversations like that is, number one, most men are not used to that. But number two, when you do that, you really understand, how does this person, that iron sharpens iron, how does this person help me? But then how do I help them? Right. And that's how we strengthen each other. Like, you help me with a physical transformation, I'll help you with communication with marriage. Right.
I love it. Yeah. The other day I went out, jumped in the river with a group of guys. Like that was the thing, right? We like the cold plunge and the ice bath kind of stuff. And it was one of these guys' birthday. His name's John, and John decided what he wanted was to just have donuts in the park, some coffee in the park. What I didn't realize though is that this group of guys was going to stand around in a circle. There's like 15 of us there. And then John just made us all go around the circle. It's like, man, how are you doing in life right now? What do you need?
Yeah.
And like, I'm sitting there, and it was a 45-minute to an hour long conversation. There was no goods. There was no fines. There was no, what was the other one? Good, fine.
Good, fine, busy. Good, fine, busy.
Yeah. There was no good, fine, busy. It was all like real. It was like, hey, this is what I'm doing in business. God, I'm struggling around this part of my business. God, I'm struggling around this part of my life. Oh, my kids are getting ready to graduate. I don't really know what I'm doing next. And like, to hear that and to hear that honesty, like, I walked away just energized for the day. I couldn't tell you how much I was allowing just their stories to impact me. It's like, hey, I'm a person, they're a person, we're all living through the same kind of shit. Like, how cool is this? And I can impact some of their lives and they can impact mine. That's really cool. And I don't know any of them before I went out there, which was, I think, pretty needed.
Very needed. In fact, you don't know how much you need it until until the conversation starts. Yeah. And many men will have that conversation and be like, man, where's this been? Right? Yeah. Where's this been? And how do I get this like on a regular basis? Because when you have that on a regular, every man, I look at this as a rope team. Your tribe is a rope team. And let's just say you have a circle of 5 people that you spend the most time with, right? Maybe it's in a mastermind, maybe it's in a circle of friends, maybe it's in your church, who knows where it is, right? But the most important thing is that each man truly understands what their strength is and then what's needed. But the rope team is this. When you're climbing a mountain with a team, look at any Everest documentary. There are men that are more energized than others at different parts on the mountain, right? And some of the men who are tired will get a second wind, right? And then start to lead. And then the ones who are leading will start to get tired and they'll start to drag back. But what do? They all help each other. You're all connected by a rope. When the men who are falling behind need help, you've got the men who are leading the pack who are going to help. And then they fall behind, then they're going to need help. So our job as men is, when you're in a season when you're climbing the peak and you're in a good spot, your job is to always look behind you for the man who needs a rope, right? Mm. You always got to be that man who's looking to, hey, I'm winning in my life. How might I share some of these wins so other people can benefit from them too? And then when you're in the valley, here's one of the hardest things to do as a man, right? But when you're behind, your most important job is to ask for help. Ask for help. Do not remain quietly silent back there and stoic and lone wolf and then try to get up that mountain without help. You're shortchanging your journey, number one. You're making it way more troublesome than you need to be. Not to mention the fact, one of the 6 basic human needs is contribution. That's one of the 6 basic human needs. That's why we as men, when we help somebody, we feel really good. Like, someone asked, like, dude, if you came to me and asked me for advice, that would make me feel on top of the world, right? And for me to pour into you, that would make me feel good. But you asking for advice as a man, that's hard for most of us to do, because we're like, man, if I do that, I'm going to come across as weak. And I'll finish this point with one story. I interviewed a Navy SEAL by the name of Chris Sinog. He is one of the most elite Navy SEAL snipers on the planet. He trained Chris Kyle. And one of the things that when I interviewed Chris, he spoke about teams. And I asked him this one question. I was like, why is it the SEALs are so successful? I don't know, like, what is the secret sauce? He's like, it's team. It's team. There's not one SEAL out there that goes out and dominates on their own. Not one. He's like, and when we need help, we ask for it. And I was like, time out. Like, you actually ask for help? Like, come on, you're all big badass SEALs. He goes, we're big badass SEALs because we ask for help. If I'm pinned down, I ask for help. And then if a guy's asking for help who's pinned down, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to go help them. He's like, that is the secret sauce to our, that is communication. When we're down, we ask. And that's how we succeed. Like no man does this on their own. He's like, and here's the other thing too. If I don't ask for help and I'm quietly miserable, and maybe I'm going to drag the entire team down if I don't ask for help. So I thought that was really powerful, even to hear that from like one of the most elite Navy SEAL snipers on the planet, right? Ask for help. I was like, holy crap. Well, if these guys can ask for help, why can't we? Right.
And if you're sitting there saying good, fine, busy, you're conditioning the people around you to stop asking.
Yeah.
Right. So then it puts even more pressure on you. And then when you do say something, they're like, man, you've been saying you're fine. Like, what's going on?
Right.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. So then, this grew outside of just a podcast for you. This is a platform. It's an ecosystem. It's a mastermind group. You're impacting hundreds of lives. Maybe talk a little bit about that. How did this grow, kind of a life of its own, if you will?
Yeah. In 2015, I really started asking for guidance. I wanted to do something with Dad Edge at the time. It was a Good Dad Project, and really wanted to do something with it and, beyond the podcast. And I wanted to, I never expected it to turn into, an organization. Yeah, I just really didn't. I was looking for more speakers speaking things and writing more books and that kind of thing. So I joined this mastermind, and at the time it was $500 to join this mastermind a month. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have $500 to spend. And I'll never forget the guy who is the main facilitator, the guy who owned it. We had a conversation. He told me, he was like, it's $500. And I was like, that's a lot of money, man. I was like, I don't have $500 to spend. He goes, oh, that's fine. He goes, can I give you just a side of this that maybe you're not seeing? And I was like, yeah, sure. He's like, listen, you come and do life with us. It's going to cost you an hour of your time per week, and it's going to cost you $500 a month. He's like, you're also going to be surrounded by other men who are highly successful, creating businesses, creating the family and the marriages that they want. And that in and of itself, just being in that environment, you're going to learn a lot. He's like, now, here's the flip side. There's a cost of doing nothing. You just don't see it that way. He's like, I want you to imagine your life a year from now, and you did nothing. You just kept going the way you're going, no direction. Where's your life at? And he said, call me later today. And that was the end of our call. And then I called him back 5 minutes later. It didn't take all day. I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. And that was the best thing I ever did. I spent 9 months in that mastermind. And I actually left the mastermind because I was the only podcaster, I was the only author, the only speaker in my group. And I wasn't getting what I thought I needed. And on my exit interview with the same guy, he's like, Larry, why are you leaving? I told him. And he's like, He's like, let me ask you one question. You see what we do? Iron sharpens iron. We help men be better business owners, better husbands, better fathers. What if you just did this? What if you created something like this for fathers? And I was like, I never thought of it that way. He was like, I was hoping you'd get it in the first couple months that you were here, but it never did, never set in. And we just kind of laughed about it. I was like, okay, I'll try. I was like, so what do I do? He's like, reach out to 10 men, ask them if they want to do something like this with you, and just ask them to give you feedback. So that was 2016. All 10 men said yes. And then it grew from there. And here we are 5 years later. And it has been the most amazing, most rewarding thing. And to see men elevate their marriages, their communication, their intimacy, create an extraordinary relationship with their wife that they otherwise wouldn't have, to create an incredible connection with their kids that they were struggling with before, to help them manage their personal finances that, by the way, most of us don't get any education on because that's something else we do, to help men take care of their physical, mental, emotional, spiritual being, and then to be a leader. Those are our 5 pillars, and that's what we help men do. And it has been amazing to literally see men just make 2 millimeter changes in their lives that make all the difference in those areas.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And so you guys are doing live events, or it's a mastermind group, or like what is it like specifically still, and what's it heading toward, if you don't mind?
Yeah, everything we do is virtual
Okay.
masterminds, virtual group coaching. And then, yeah, we've been doing a live event every single year. 2020, obviously, we took off because there was something called the pandemic that was around.
But just the
Uh,
pandemic, yeah.
yeah, but it's called Dad Edge Summit. That's
Okay.
our live event. We've had amazing people join us, like Gary John Bishop, who wrote the book on F Yourself and Stop Doing That Shit. But just, we have usually a couple hundred men who come out for that event every year.
Now you've got 4 boys.
Last time I counted.
Uh, and these are it's an interesting time that we're in today. It's always been an interesting time, but I think with the advent of social media, I think that there's a lot different. There's a perspective on men that is arguably changing in society. I think rightfully so in some ways. There have been some really abusive, powerful men out there have really soured the mash, I think, for everyone else. But as you're giving advice to your children as they're growing up in this world, maybe pull a couple threads here for us of like, what are you really conscious of? What are you watching, and what are you guiding them through?
Whew. So I do a rite of passage trip with each of my boys. I took my two, so I've got 15, 13, obviously 7 and 5. They haven't been on it yet, but this rite of passage is no joke. We fly out to Colorado. We hike up a 14er, a 14,000 foot mountain. It takes all day long. It takes 12 and a half hours. That mountain represents the end of them being a boy and the beginning stages of them being a man. And if you ask about the pillars, right? Honesty, integrity, right? Character, the things you do when no one else is watching you, how you treat women, right? How you manage your money. That's another one. Your spirituality and your faith. I mean, what I can tell you is that I see my boys do these things that I'm really, really proud of, right? And then sometimes I don't even realize that they're learning. So like, for instance, my 15-year-old, he is like this empathetic superhero. Like he will die hard listen and comfort people when they need it. Like his friends, maybe a girl he's talking to. And he is one of the best conversationalists I've ever seen. He's 15. That's usually when kids like are shutting down. The other night I took my 13-year-old to Top Golf, and we were leaving, and there was a guy who had gotten in a fight with his girlfriend, and he looked a little sketchy, looked a little criminal, kind of like
Sure.
I kind of had my guard up a little bit, and he came up to me. He's like, "Hey man," and I had no cash. He's like, "Hey man," he's like, "Listen, please don't judge me. Please don't judge me." He's like, "Listen, like me and my girlfriend got in a fight. Like I'm waiting on an Uber. I have $17. The Uber is $27. Like I need to get home and I don't have any money." And I said, "Hey man, I'm sorry, I don't have any money." And my son, without even hesitating, pulls out his wallet and gives this guy $10. And I just like looked at him, and I put my arm around him after we were leaving. I was like, "Why'd you do that?" He goes, "He looked like he needed it more than me." And I was like, wow. And one other story I'll share here too. Asking for help and also sidestepping the ego to allow someone else to help you. So this happened on the trip up this 14er that he's 13 now, he was 11 at the time. So we're about 7 hours into this trip. We're at that point of kind of no return. The way back is almost as much as the way if we were to round trip it, right? And I could tell, and I let him lead a lot of the way. And I could tell he was getting tired. And he had a Camelback on. He also had a backpack on with more water and food in it. He's probably carrying about 15 pounds on his back. And I had a Camelback on and a backpack on. I was carrying probably 30 pounds. And I could tell he was getting tired. And he's super competitive and very stubborn. And I stopped him and I'm like, "Hey man, why don't you give me that backpack? I can tell you're getting tired." He's like, "Nope, I'm good. I'm good." That's the other thing too. He's very strong-willed, and I like that. And I was like, "You're getting tired and you're starting to concern me. Like you're getting wobbly and the air is thin up there." And he's like, no, I'm good. We could walk for another 30 minutes. He's getting worse. And I'm like, I turn him around and I'm like, give me the backpack. Like, as your father, give me that backpack. He's like, how are you going to carry this? I was like, I'll double up. And I did. Camelback, backpack, and backpack. I mean, this load on my back was like, holy crap, this is a lot. So I take him, we walk up the mountain. He has his head hung low. Like I just basically stole the ego right out of his body. And I put my arm around him. And at the time, looking back on it, I didn't mean it condescending, but that's the way it came across. And I said, hey man, look, we all need help from time to time. When we're tired and we're weary, we need help. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get help. And I was like, dude, who knows? Maybe on this hike, I'll need your help. And I just kind of laughed about it because I had done this trip before. I'd done the same mountain before. We got to the top of that mountain. And then on the way down, my legs cramped up. And I'm a pretty athletic person. I work out every day. And I've never had leg cramps like this. And my quads completely locked up. And I knew I knew it was going to happen as we were walking down because I was like, oh my God, my legs are starting to cramp. I was like, this is not good. Like we've got 5 hours more. We got the entire descent. And I tried to ignore it. And then suddenly it just brought me to my knees. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is bad. Like I could be freaking airlifted off this thing. Like what if I can't walk down this mountain? So a friend of mine was with us too. We had 10 other guys with us. So this was a retreat that I was hosting as well. And I brought him along for the ride. And what ended up happening is I just needed some sodium and potassium in my body. So I just started eating a bunch of beef jerky and drinking a lot of Gatorade. Within 30 minutes, I was okay. And I go to look for my backpack. I couldn't find it. I was like, where's my backpack? And I look over and my son, 11 years old, got his Camelback on, his backpack and mine. He's carrying about 30 pounds on his back. I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm carrying this. I was like, no, you're not. I was like, give me that backpack. He's like, no, I'm carrying this. You said that on this trip or anywhere else, I might need to help you. And you've been laying on the ground for 30 minutes. So I'm doing this. And he pointed at me and like pointed at my chest. He's like, just deal with it. And he walked away.
Good man.
And I went to say something to him. And one of the guys who was with me, he literally put his hand on my chest. He's like, stop. Don't do that to him. Let him have this moment and you let him carry that thing as long as he possibly can until it's safe. Allow him to help you and allow him to feel the pride of knowing that he helped his dad. Okay. And that was hard. I was like, oh, I'm his big, strong dad though, man. Like I can't let him do that. And then I thought to myself, that would have been the worst thing I could have done in that moment is take that thing back. And those are the type of lessons that when I see my son step up, when I knew it was hard, like that is like that perseverance, that offering to help, even if it's $10 out of his wallet or carrying a 30-pound pack down a mountain, like they step up. Like to me, that's character, right?
100%, man. Yeah, you can't take that bag back from it. And that's the I think that's the difference in awareness, right? I mean, being able to, as a father, take a step back, or just as a person in general, taking a step back and just kind of understanding through an empathetic point of view what that means for that other person and what lesson they're really learning, and that they're always watching, and how hypocritical it would be for you to take his and not let him take yours on a rite of passage trip. Right. So well done. Like that's a phenomenal story.
Well, thanks, man. I mean, it was very humbling,
Yeah.
but it also, like, every time I tell the story now, I'm like, man, like, I think I would have regretted ripping that backpack off of his back.
Yeah.
Even though in that moment at the time, it seemed like the right thing to do. And I'm glad. And hey, listen, that's where having the right men in your life, because we had 10 guys who were part of our mastermind who were on that trip. It was a retreat. And to have another man watch my back and to help me make the right decision, where he literally stopped me. Stop. Don't take that off his back. Allow him to have this moment and allow him to carry that as long as it's physically safe for him to do it. And I probably would have chased that kid down the mountain if it wasn't for him literally physically stopping me. And I was like, you're right. Yeah. Thank you for seeing my blind spot.
I think another important thing to touch on here. I mean, we've talked about groups of men. We've talked about having that tribe. One of the things that I've really focused on in the last couple of years, specifically the last 3, is expressing to my wife the
Yep.
kind of husband or father that I'm trying to be. Like, I'm a work in progress, and like, I'm not going to do everything perfect. And this is a, if it's not in front of me every day, if it's not top of mind, I will slip. I will
Sure.
take steps back. My biggest challenge is with social media. I think I'm in my office all day. I go out into, general population outside of my office, into my home, and my family's there. And then sometimes I'll finally sit down and I'll start scrolling a Facebook or something like that. And my wife and I started taking pictures of each other and sending it to each other's phone when we're in a room with our family and we're on social media. Cause it's like, by the way, this is what everyone's seeing of you right now. This is where your attention is while we're here.
That.
And that was really ego dissolving.
Yeah.
Or for me, it's just, I'm sitting there and it's like, I want to have this reaction, like, I've got important stuff to do, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, you're watching cat videos and seeing somebody post pizza in Sheboygan. Like, it doesn't matter. Your kids are right there in front of you. Like, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, you probably talk a lot about that relationship with the spouse or the partner in life. And like, do you have any kind of, again, advice offhand and how to start those conversations and those relationships in order to level up at home?
Yeah, man. Great question. So, and I'll share with you some structure around marriage, right? That no one will tell you. This is not my stuff. This comes from Lance and Brandy Salazar and Hal Elrod. They wrote the book, The Miracle Morning for Couples. There's 4 elements of an extraordinary marriage. One is your own self-care. You can't possibly pour from an empty cup. Sorry. You can't do it. You can't pour from an empty cup. I don't care who you are. And if you're trying to pour from an empty cup, chances are that there's crap coming out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to make sure your self-care is on point. Then there's partnership. Partnership is the not so sexy stuff of marriage. That's the chores, the roles, the bills, the scheduling, all that stuff. Here's the funny thing. That's where 50% of arguments happen, is in that partnership loop, because that's where expectation lies. So it's like, why am I cooking dinner again? Shouldn't he be doing it? Why am I vacuuming the floors again? Shouldn't she be doing it? Right? No one understands what their role is and what their job is, but that's what that partnership loop is all about. Then you have friends. Are you friends with your spouse? At the end of the day, do you have a friendship or not? Do you have things in common? And then, of course, there's number 4, which you don't have to explain that to any man. That's intimacy and lovers, right? Now, think of those as 4 pillars, right? 4 pillars need a foundation. That foundation is communication. Now, most people will tell you when they describe communication and what they want, they use 2 adjectives: more, better. I want more communication. I want better communication. What does that look like? I don't know. Optimal communication is several different things. It's active listening. It's generative questions. It's not, how was your day? What's for dinner? What are we doing with the kids tonight? It's like, hey, what was the best part of your day and why was it so meaningful? That sounds amazing. Tell me more. What was the most challenging part of your day? How'd you overcome? What are you most excited about tomorrow? Things like that bring conversation, not just like checking the box to our default, right? So there's generative questions. Then there's tactical empathy. Your 3 needs of your wife, man: seen, heard, and understood. Seen, heard, and understood. So if you're not asking her questions and actively listening and using tactical empathy to let her know, I see you, I feel you, I hear you, you're missing out on a huge part of what communication is all about. Then there's mirrors and labels, right? You never want to ask why to anybody. Like, Jake, why'd you send that email? Jake, I saw you sent that email. Tell me about that. It's the same question. One's going to put you on the defense. One's going to keep you on the offense. Your wife is the same way. So using all these things that I'm talking about, those 4 pillars in communication, a lot of us think that, we love each other. It's a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's a skill. It is a skill. Tactical empathy is a skill. It's not a feeling, right? Active listening, that's a skill. That's not a feeling, right? And most of us think, well, if I need help with that, am I broken? No, you're not broken. Like, we all need help with that.
Yeah.
Just as much like, you have to go take a test to get behind the wheel of a car, but they'll let any of us get married with a signature. But you've got to learn the skills and the street signs, the lights and the lanes and all these things before you get behind the wheel of a car. And that's what those 4 pillars and that foundation is all about, is learning those skills. So to answer your question, get really curious and appreciative of your wife. Most of us will go to a conversation with our wives with expectation and agenda. If I'm going to go to her, I expect this to come out of it, this agenda. But if you ask her a meaningful question, like, tell me about the best part of your day. And it's not for any reason more than you're just curious about her. She's going to pick up on that. She's going to love that. And then when you use words like, oh, sounds like that was a really great day for you. I can only imagine like how great that felt. When you reflect back to your wife like that, instead of being like, oh, cool. It's a huge difference, right? It's a huge difference. But that dating her and always be curious about questions. We've got this resource, and not to self-promote. We've got this resource. It's totally free. It's called 21 Days to an Extraordinary Marriage. It's just an email sequence over 15 days. I'm sorry, over 21 days. And what it does in there is it teaches you these skill sets of communication, how to connect with her, what questions to ask her. When you take her out on a date night, here's 25 questions you can ask her. You probably never asked her. Or if you have, it's probably been since your first date. So getting really curious about her is huge.
I love that. I love that. And that's not to like, it's so funny. There's a lot of men have those feelings. It's just so hard, to your point, to express them and put in words. It takes practice. It takes intention. It takes putting yourself in that position and allowing your ego, like we talked about earlier, to just erode enough to the point where it's okay to ask other people how they feel. And a conversation's coming. You might have one. So it's all good, man. Hey, as we're wrapping up on the hour here, what are you excited about this year? And then also, where's the best place for people to find you, the resources and things that you're doing?
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much. Couple of things I'm excited about. So by the end of the year, by the end of this year, I will have launched 2 new books. One is actually launching on June 1st. I'm not sure when this show is coming out, but it's going to be called Screen Time: The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's a kid's book. It's a book that parents can read to their kids about screens. The good things about screens, the not so good things about screens, the boundaries and the parameters we can put around screens. And it's so easy to read to the kids, and it's super entertaining. It's fun. It's funny. At the end of this year, I will have launched a book called Legendary Fatherhood, and what the pillars are about there. And it's going to be a few different stories. How to create like these epic relationships with your wife. How to go about creating connection and psychological safety with your kids. All these different things that we're always so curious about that we just don't know the map to. So those are the things that I'm super excited about. Our mastermind Dad Edge Alliance is growing every single week, which has been phenomenal. And I don't say that for the number of men who come do life with us. There are hundreds of them. I say that because every day we see stories of men succeeding. And that is just amazing. Like to see here's my goal. And it's a big, fat, audacious goal. I want the men who come and do life with us. The divorce rate in America right now is 50%. What most people don't know is people that stay together are in 3 different camps, and they're divided up into 33, 33, 33. A third of people that stay together can actually identify their relationship as they're happy. Another 1/3 is like, it's all right. It's not everything I ever wanted, but it's okay. I don't want to break up, I guess. And then the final 1/3, it's totally gone. No connection whatsoever. They're living under the same roof as roommates. They're waiting for the kids to move out or their finances to get in order before they break up. But here's what I can tell you. This is the big, fat, audacious goal. I want to cut the divorce rate in half. Men who come and do life with us and want to create an extraordinary marriage, I want them out of that 50% camp, and our goal is to literally cut the divorce rate in half. And not just cut the divorce rate, but elevate marriages in places where they've never been, right? To elevate those connections with their wife, that they're like, man, this is the best thing ever. To put as many people into that first camp where people stay together, where they can actually say, yes, the person I married is exactly who I wanted to marry. And it's only getting better. And of course, there's bumps along the road, but it's only getting better. That's what I'm most excited about.
That is awesome, my man. And the easiest way to find you on social or the web.
Yeah. Instagram is the Dad Edge, at the Dad Edge. Good Dad Project is our website. Soon it'll be thedadedge.com. You type in any one of those. If the Dad Edge doesn't pop up for you, find us a Good Dad Project. But sooner or later, everything will be redirected over to thedadedge.com.
Larry Hagner, my man, thank you so much for sharing your time, your insights, and best to you and all the lives that you get to touch through your platform and the things that you've built here, man. I'm just so impressed and so humbled and honored to be able to host you today. So cheers.
Back at you, man. Thanks for having me.